In a world where even the smallest disagreements can lead to arguments, violence, and even death, two brothers tackle the difficult subjects.
So we're going to talk about the border policy, and this will be a shorter one. It took a little while to get started here, so we won't spend as much time on it. And this is also one that there's not a whole lot of I guess deep research. I don't know if you were doing anything. I was doing some basic reading on what's going on and that sort of thing. And so it's more. What I found was that at least from my perspective, what do I feel is going on, and what's what is maybe an approach that could be taken. And it my overall assessment is that the border, particularly the southern border, for Democrats is the equivalent of gun control in Republicans, meaning that most of them recognize that there should be some structure, some order, but they're terrified of saying anything out loud for fear of losing the next election that they're going to be in. Um, so that most Democrats end up with the perspective of really just countering anything the Republicans put out there about border, because the Republicans are usually putting out some sort of structure limitations, some rules around the border crossing and who gets in, and so the Democrats' policy is just anti-Republican policy, more or less. Um, Anything about the overall view on things from your perspective?
Well, first, I kind of disagree with the analogy with the gun control, but
All right,
we won't get
have
into
at it.
that.
Now,
Well, we
why
don't need to
why
get into guns
why do you disagree with that?
because I feel like there's a lot of Republicans that have plenty to say about gun control. I don't think they're hiding from the issue. I think they say things about it. They disagree with what's being done. They don't feel like, and maybe some of the Democrats feel the same way, that Republicans on gun control, there's plenty of them that say, yeah, we have enough in place. Maybe we could make some small changes, but nobody's talking about the small changes that would make the different type of difference that we need to make. So, they don't want what people are pushing for, if that makes sense. So,
It does.
and it doesn't really address the biggest issues.
Okay. Yeah, I would disagree with that. But of course, we don't want to turn this into a conversation on gun control and all that stuff, because that's not what we're here to talk about. Maybe at some other point we can. But interesting perspective anyway. Uh,
But,
so
but, but as far as overall on the border, I guess a couple of things that I would say about that is, first off, my thinking is that there are. I think first off, as I've thought about this in the past, I often thought to myself, like, I think there's other things we can do besides a border wall. But I think that we should bear in mind uh, the predicament that those people closest to the border find themselves in, wherein there are a lot of people close to that border. And we should be and I'm not saying that you're not doing this or that anybody else isn't doing this. Well, I think in general, this isn't done enough, that there is some real danger to those people where they are close to border crossings, illegal border crossings, where there's drug dealers that come across, where coyotes take people across and make them into drug mules, whether they want to or not. There's some attacks that happen there. I think it's a dangerous place. So we should bear in mind what those border states have to deal with. As far as, looking at the overall picture, I do agree, maybe for the reasons that you stated, that Democrats don't quite know what to do there. I think there's some easy common sense. Well, another thing I would say before I get to, some solutions, I find it, I guess when I was first thinking about the border wall, I thought, oh, what a stupid idea. It just seems ridiculous, because it's like, how long is it? 2,000 miles or 2,500 miles? And then, if you're really worried about the danger, you've got to worry about the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. You got to worry about, Canada. There's just no way to have, even if you put up a wall, to be able to monitor all of it seems really difficult. So my first thought was, well, and that was before I really thought about the danger that some of those border states are in. We do have to consider that, because if we just say, well, listen, we're not going to, if we're not going to be able to stop everybody from coming in, there's nothing we can do, so let's just let them come across. Well, those border states then bear the brunt of it. And one friend of mine, when talking about it, and I kind of presented that point, said, well, listen, right now it's a flood coming across the border. We can stop the bleeding to some degree, so it's not a flood, but it's if you got a wound that's gushing blood, you might not stop the bleeding completely, but you want to slow it down at least. And so there's something to be said for more border patrol. And I don't know exactly what the right answer is there. I'm just saying we should bear in mind how difficult it is for places like, Juarez, El Paso, a lot of Texas, places where a lot of people are coming across illegally, because those are dangerous areas. And when people are coming through your farms, or, there should be some recourse to the governments to be able to help them.
Sure.
I do think my biggest thing that I would say is I think we could ease that flow tremendously, that illegal flow, if we made it far, far easier to come across legally. And I think we talked about this a little bit the other day. Like, a lot of the money that's going to drug dealers and coyotes and other people that are bringing people across illegally goes away if it were far easier for people to come legally, and give them a tax ID, let them get insurance, get them into the system, and collect taxes from them more than we have in the past. I mean, there's 11 million or something, by some estimates, illegal aliens here in the country. Give them it doesn't have to go right to citizenship. Just give them the right to be here at least for a while to work and send money home. I'd be fine with that. And then that eases some of the strain on the borders. It makes it much easier to control it because there's not so many people trying to get here illegally. Frankly, if I lived in Mexico or someplace in Central America and I realized that, man, there's a ton of money in America, I'd probably want to come too. I understand why they want to come. Why not give them a chance to do it? It doesn't have to be to citizenship, but let them come and work and pay taxes and do those types of things.
Yeah. First of all, there was one aspect that you didn't address, and wasn't really relevant to what you were saying, which of course makes sense. So before I go into what to reply to what you said, I want to first of all lay a heap of blame on the media, because I feel like this is a topic that gets really ignored until a governor from one of the southern states goes and busses up some people to some other people, and then it's back in the news again. And so it's not. I know that I was a little guilty of thinking that the problem wasn't really a problem because I wasn't seeing it in the news. And then you hear Abbott from Texas complaining about the fact that the cities are being overrun, and I'm saying, wait a second, and then looking at it, oh yeah, they actually are, but no one's talking about it. And then Kamala Harris goes down to some Central American countries. Oh, that's in the news again, and then it's quiet for 6 months, and then some immigrants end up outside of Kamala Harris's house, and then we're talking about it again. So I feel like it gets ignored, and people like me that are not seeing the issue on a daily basis don't know it's an issue because no one's talking about it. And that really falls on the media because it's being talked about in the southern states and by the southern governors, but not talked about outside of those areas. And so to address the issues you mentioned specifically.
Well, Brian, before you go into that, I would say in this case, I think it's the left-leaning media not talking about it, because
Probably true.
I heard more about it. And I know that the right-leaning media leaves other things out, but this is one that they have left out, probably because of their constituency or whatever. If we can call it
I think you're probably right there. I think that is probably true. One of the first things to talk about the immigration problem, and first of all, I do acknowledge that there is a huge problem among the southern states. Once I started to look into it, I mean, it's really horrible that not more is being done to help alleviate the problem. When you have all these people that are going across the border, well, how far can they get? Even if whether they're here legally, illegally, whether they're waiting for the court dates to check on the asylum of anything, they can't get too far from the border, and so they end up in New Mexico and Arizona and Southern California and Texas. And so all these states their systems are getting overwhelmed. But it's important to recognize that most of the illegal immigrants that are here in the country come across a legal border crossing and then overstay their temporary visa. most of them that are here in this country are not walking across a desert or climbing a fence or doing, being hustled through across rivers by coyotes or anybody else. And so if you want to address the problem, the first place that you need to be looking to address the problem is tracking and managing the people that are coming across the border legally. And the same thing goes for the drugs that are coming across the border. They're not being hustled through across the rivers. They're coming through the legal border crossings inside of commercial vehicles and inside of personal vehicles. And there's been a number of studies about the sources of both the immigrants and also of the drugs. And so the focus on the wall looks very impressive when the wall is being built. And it looks like you're doing something very effective, but in fact, you're not. What needs to be done is focus the attention on the legal border crossings in order to control both the immigrants and the drugs.
Yeah, that could be true. I haven't really looked into that. But yeah, it just kind of goes to what I was saying before, which is, give them a legal way to be here. And I don't know how long the stay is right now, but let them stay. Like, I think it's fine. And I guess, if we do get them into the system, if they are coming legally and staying here for a period of time, like, what happens? Like, I guess then the question I'd ask you is, so they're coming here, and they're presumably coming here to work, and then is they're coming here to work and then overstaying that work, or they're coming here for vacation? How are they coming?
Well, what I read was they called it a temporary visa, and I'm not positive on this. I don't think that you can actually do work on a temporary visa. I think you have to be given a specific work visa. So I think they're coming over claiming for a visit to see family or maybe a vacation, and then they just don't leave.
Yeah. So yeah, I think my solution then would be a good one in those cases as well. Let them work. They're working anyway. Let them work. Give them a work visa. Give them a tax ID number. And I think I would be, frankly, I wouldn't care too much if there were. I guess at some point we have to figure out how much immigration we want to allow to turn into citizenship. That could be a separate discussion from what I'm saying right here. For now, either forever or for a long period of time, let them work, give them a tax ID, let them give them options for health insurance so they don't overload the system in that way as well. And I think that would be a great way to get rid of a lot of this. If that is true, that they're coming through temporary stays and then they're just overstaying them. 11 million people, maybe that's the case. I guess it's that easy to get temporary visas. Obviously that 11 million is coming from a lot of different years, but that still seems like a lot of people. Yeah, give them work visas. Why not? They're working right now. If those 11 million people are here, most of them are working right now. And frankly, a lot of the people that come across the border are hard workers. They're coming here because they want a better life. They want to improve themselves. We're getting good people. So allow them to work, give them a tax ID, give them options for insurance, and then that problem that you're illustrating goes away to a great degree, does it not?
You don't think there would be an issue of overwhelming the workforce? If there's essentially an open border where it's just tracking the people as they come in, giving them an ID so that taxes can be paid and they can be tracked to a degree. I could imagine that. I wouldn't say that some of those Central American countries empty out, but if there was basically, welcoming them with open arms, you'd have quite a flow, I would think, of some of those people coming up here to work.
No, I don't think that would be a problem for a couple of reasons. One, a big part of it would be the people that are already here working. Two, I think that the economy would respond, and I think it would respond well, because if there all of a sudden were this excess of workers that didn't let's say that they're not going to cost as much, because I would imagine the typical person coming across the border for whatever reason, we're not talking here about doctors that come here or lawyers or anything. We're talking for the most part about low skilled workers that come here to try to make some money. And I think that doing that would make manufacturing less expensive. That would make farming less expensive. And a lot of these people that are using these migrant workers anyway, now they would do it the right way. They could pay the taxes on those people. They wouldn't have to be kind of doing things under the table. There'd be a lot more protection for those people. And if at first there was a bit of a strain, meaning that some people here lost jobs, first of all, we have a welfare system to help. But then more and more businesses could start up because there would be this resource of available workers that did not cost very much. And right now in this country, at least, it's probably changing now, but for the last year or two, it was really hard to find workers, and we could use them. And this is a place, our country is a place where there's a ton of entrepreneurs, a ton of businesses that start up. So all of those entrepreneurs and business owners could then afford to pay people. I think it would be great. And if after a while there wasn't as many jobs available, then fewer people would come across the border, and we would find a balance. So no, I don't worry about that.
Well, okay. I mean, that's interesting. I would not agree with you on that one. I think that I think there has to be a control of the flow. I think that if you just open the gates and let anybody come in, yes, eventually you could find some equilibrium where people the jobs all get filled. But I think that the consequence would be it would take a number of months or maybe even years before the word got back to their homes that the jobs are all filled, but and they'd still be coming on over here. And I would also worry about the quality of life for some of the mid to low income people in this country that are now being undercut by those that are willing to work for dramatically less. So I sound very conservative when I look at it that way. But I think the analogy that is brought up from time to time is that if you've got a boat and a bunch of people that are around you that are trying to find some place dry to get to, well, there's a limit to how many people you can bring onto your boat. And yes, it may be cruel to not allow everybody on your boat, but if you overload your boat and the boat capsizes, well, now no one's getting saved or no one's getting taken care of. And so the basic idea would be to limit the flow. And I think there's one thing, and I realize that what I'm about to say is sort of a pie in the sky, and I know it's been tried before, but there's two approaches to trying to control immigration. One is from the source and one is at the destination. And so people, if you're talking about economic immigration, people are coming for economics because they want to improve their financial situation. They're coming because things aren't good where they are. And so you can either improve things where they are, or you can try and get punitive at the destination. And like I said, and I know that this has been tried. I know that there's a problem with corruption that exists in some of these other countries. In fact, that's why a lot of these people are leaving Guatemala, Honduras, and Ecuador. I think Ecuador. There's 3 countries in Central America that they were talking about where they're having real problems with the government, with corruption, with crime in those areas. And so
South America.
What is it?
Ecuador is South America.
Okay, I can't remember what the other name of the other country.
El Salvador, maybe.
That's it. Yes, El Salvador. Thank you. That's the one. And so that's where a lot of the immigrants are coming from right now. Mexico is one of the highest numbers because they're closest. But those 3 countries, you got people that are willing to travel, a couple thousand miles, sometimes on foot, because they are trying to get away from the situation that they were in and hoping for something better here in America. And it doesn't have to be, they don't have to get much to get an improvement. And the thing with all that is they'll stay where they are if things are just a little bit better. It's not like, they have to get the $15 American wage and they have to, in order for them to stay where they were back in Guatemala or wherever they came from, because they have lots of other things back at home that they don't have in America. They don't have their families, the food that they know, the language that they can speak, the environment that they grew up in their entire lives. So they'll usually take just a little bit of an improvement, a little bit, having a little bit of a safer environment, a little bit of an improvement in the economics. And most cases, they'll stay where they are unless there's a dramatic improvement that they have, to come over to the U.S. Thoughts?
Maybe. I do think foreign aid is I guess you're suggesting foreign aid. I think
that's one option.
Maybe we should have a discussion on that at some point, because, go ahead.
I was going to say that's one option.
What else would there be?
One way to incentivize companies to move down to that area. Another way would be going through NGOs. You were doing something in college about going down. Was it Venezuela where you're working doing the microloans?
Yeah, the microloans were good. The difficulty is microloans are not bad. I think they can help individuals, but to help an economy as a whole, the big things that need to be fixed are, what are they? Education, sanitation, and really it's corruption. But and it's just so hard to get those things to be fixed. I do like the idea of foreign investment. It's funny to hear you say that, because once again, it kind of goes against what you were saying in the past. Because when we were outsourcing to China, you had big things. You didn't like that at all, that these companies were outsourcing to China. And now you're talking about doing that in South America, which I am totally on board with. I love NAFTA. I would be fine to have free trade agreements with those countries. I think that's a great solution. I also have more of an abundance mindset for what would happen if those people came here. I think in the long run, getting a cheap workforce would be good for the economy. More and more businesses would start up. And you said, well, they wouldn't realize that the jobs kind of dried up, for months or years. I don't think that's true. I think they find out very quickly. They're communicating with each other. They hear about it. Oh, so-and-so went up there and didn't get a job, and things can turn around in a heartbeat, where they realize, okay, we shouldn't go to America anymore. But and you talked about a little bit about, we'll control the flow. Well, fine. Yeah, we don't have to allow every worker to come here. We could say, listen, it's going to be the same way that they restrict the number of new citizens every year. They can restrict immigration and just say, we're only going to take so many, but we're going to take more than we have in the past, because they're just workers. And we're not going to talk about that these people eventually will achieve citizenship. I don't think that's a good idea, at least in great numbers, for a lot of reasons, some of which you brought up, but I could say some others as well. I'm fine with some of them becoming citizens after a certain period of time. But, I would say, listen, let them come. We can still control the flow, but we can allow far more than we have in the past. The fact that they're coming, Brian, that so many are coming, and so many of them are coming illegally, tells us it tells me anyway, that we're not allowing as many as we should, because they're not overloading our workforce or our businesses, our industries. Because if they were, they wouldn't still be coming. In the past, well, I guess you'd say, well, maybe just that's because a lot of people here are losing their jobs, but it doesn't seem like that's a huge problem, where there's all these people here that are losing their jobs. It seems like it's going well, and they're filling a part of our economy that is very worthwhile. That a lot of our unskilled people don't want to do. They're doing jobs that many other people don't want to do, and I really respect that. So I'd allow a lot more of them to come. I do love the idea that you presented of building up businesses in those areas, of just creating a free trade agreement where businesses can go there, and we stop with the tariffs, we stop with the trade restrictions, and we allow businesses to go to Central America and South America and do whatever they want to do, build cars, build factories, whatever they want to do. I think that would be great. So I'm totally on board with that.
And I do want to address, to me anyway, the difference between building corporate infrastructure down in Central and South America and building it in China. And for me, the big difference is that in China, the benefit is strictly price. Whereas in Central and South America or Mexico, wherever, there's an added benefit, which is that for anyone that worries about the assembly line job in America being taken by a Honduran, well, if you build the factory down in Honduras, he's going to stay in Honduras. He's not going to come up here to take the job. So you're alleviating a lot of the pressure on the border. So there's the bigger picture about the population and about managing the stability within the North and South America, in the Americas. And so there's a larger benefit to us beyond just the price of the product on the shelf. That's why I feel there's a difference, and why we benefit more as the American consumer and as American citizens when we help to stabilize and improve the economic situation in some of those countries down there.
Well, it's very protectionist of you. Surprised to hear that, but what's that?
What do you mean by protectionist? Explain that.
Well, you're worried about outsource. You're kind of protecting our economy from China, and then you're protecting our economy from Honduras by saying, well, they're going to come here either way, so let's let them build factories down there. Like you're very worried about foreign competition. And I'm more of a free trade guy. Just don't worry about that. I figure if we can get cheaper prices, no matter where they are, and yeah, cheaper prices is a big part of it. I mean, quality is going to matter, but if the quality is that much worse, even cheap prices won't incentivize us to build, to get stuff from other places. But even if we outsource to China, if we're getting stuff for less expensive, that's going to be good for industry here. So we should not be paying a higher price just to keep the jobs here. That's not good for the American economy in the long run. It would be better for the American economy if we could get those goods and services for lower prices, because then we can use that money for other things in our economy. But whatever. I'm glad that you agree that that because of the other added benefit that you mentioned, which perhaps is an added benefit in Honduras or El Salvador, would be that they also don't come here because their situation gets better in Honduras. Yeah, let's do that. Whatever is going to get us to more free trade agreements, I'm on board, and I would support it.
So we could use like the humanitarian angle of helping the people down there to kind of weasel in our free trade into.
Yeah. And frankly, in general, I feel I really do feel that the best way to help these countries, I think foreign aid is a horrible way to help these countries. As you said, there's so much corruption. It goes to the wrong places. And I've got a ton of other reasons why foreign aid is, there's been a lot of documentaries and stories about that recently, about how foreign aid has caused more problems than we anticipated. There's all these unintended consequences, as there often seems to be. And I do think that the best way to raise a country up is to improve their economy.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's better than almost anything else you can do. It's really hard to change a government. It's hard to get them to put a good constitution in place. But once people, and it's hard to force countries to, just as another example, to be better about pollution, about climate change. And however, if in those countries you create a really strong middle class because business is there, then all of a sudden those people have more political power, even in China. And then all of a sudden things get better because the people get bugged when there's pollution, when there's climate issues or whatever. So they're going to change it. So just improve the economy of an area, and all of a sudden so many different things get better. They take care of themselves. The country's going to take. They're not going to take as much political. They're not going to take as much from. They're not going to allow the government to do as much because now they have some pull and some power in that country. So I think, yeah, I'm on board with that 100%.
Yeah, and there's one other aspect that we haven't really addressed, and I don't really know the solution to it, which of the people increasing people's desire to stay where they are, and that's the safety and security. One of the big reasons why people are leaving some of those countries is the gangs, the crime that's out there, and I don't know what a good solution to that is, other than giving the government some money, which is always, especially now, kind of a dangerous situation because those governments are known for their corruption. So hopefully we can find a solution to that one too. The other
Well, I think
aspect,
that's
go ahead.
I think that's a further, if businesses go there and invest. Now you can't do it in places where the gang violence is terrible, but if you can convince somehow companies to go there and invest, and the economic situation increases, people don't put up with that anymore. So while it's not it's not always going to work. Like even in Mexico, where they've improved pretty dramatically, there's still huge problems with the cartel because there's so much corruption in these governments. But the better the economy gets in these areas, the less they'll put up with gang violence, the less they'll put up with political corruption, the less they'll put up with pollution. So anything we can do to get businesses to go there and invest, we should be encouraging that 100%. I mean, same with China, for example. There's different reasons why we want the middle class to increase in China. But I think I could make the same argument there. You said, well, they're not going to come here like they would from Honduras and El Salvador, but they're going to take more control of that communist government the stronger they get. The bigger that middle class gets, the more money they get, the less easy it will be for the Communist Party in China to keep control of those people. So the fact that they've opened things up and become more capitalist in that country is, to me, a sign that eventually that's the one thing we couldn't do it ourselves as America. The one thing that's going to get them, to a more democratic, more capitalist economy is when they start opening up and allowing these people to become more wealthy. Because if you have an 800 million person middle class, that's pretty hard to keep under control, if that makes sense. So for similar reasons, we should be doing things in China.
Well, and there's going to be some people that'll say, "Oh, but look how bad things are in China. Look how the government keeps on cracking down." But you're right. There is an improvement. There has been an improvement. They are not the strict communist China that they were 20 years ago. So yes, there is. It may not be improving fast enough for some people, but you're right. It is improving. Now we only have a few minutes left, and I do want to address just a couple of the things that some other people might have questions about. First one is understanding the difference between economic immigrants and immigrants coming in for asylum. And for some people, they like to kind of move very fluidly from one to the other. But when people come here seeking asylum, they're essentially saying that the situation back home is so dangerous for them that they could potentially die staying where they are. And so this is often used for political refugees, for especially in some of those Catholic countries that are very strict Catholic countries. Some of the gay and lesbian population is coming up seeking asylum, but also people that are trying to use the asylum claim when there's a lot of gang violence. And I think people are trying to debate whether that's actually a good claim for asylum. But it is worth acknowledging that there is not just the economic issue that is driving people up here.
Sure.
There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and it's slipping my mind right now. Anything else on the topic of the southern border that you wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about?
I guess I'd reiterate that I wouldn't feel, I don't know if you need to build a wall across the whole place, but I think we owe it to those border states to really look hard at what can be done to protect them a little bit better. And it has seemed a bit hypocritical to me that some of these northeastern state governors and other places, western state governors that kind of criticize and say, "Hey, we're asylum cities," and then they get inundated by these, these illegal aliens, and then they're like, "Well, we can't take anymore." And so I do think that something should be done. I think we need to give them some more support, whatever's going to ease the the pressure on them should be done. And I think I like both solutions, helping the people in their states, and giving them a solution, or sorry, in their own countries, like we talked about, allowing more of them to come here legally, and then also offering money to be able to protect those states, maybe build some walls in some areas, some more border patrol. That seems like, I haven't looked into it completely, but that seems like a good solution, because it does seem like there's a lot of danger down there.
Yeah, and I would kind of follow up and say that the job of managing and protecting the border is the job of the federal government, and that they have been falling woefully short. Although we don't have the dramatic yet ineffective solutions of Trump, like Trump's wall right now. If there's any solution, I don't even know what it is. There's been a claim recently that Biden's new border policy has created a dramatic drop in January of border crossings. But if you look at the graphs over the past couple of years, there's always a dramatic drop in January because of holiday seasons and everything else. So it's much too early to tell if his policy has actually had any sort of dramatic impact. So on that note, we will call this conversation done, and we'll see if you can rack your brain and figure out what it was that we were planning on talking about next week, so we can do that.
Okay.
If you think of it, send me a message.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks, Colin. Bye.
We hope you learned something in this episode of Brother versus Brother, a podcast about difficult conversations. We also hope that you enjoyed it enough to subscribe to the podcast. You can help us by spreading the word. Share this episode on your favorite social media so that others will have an opportunity to experience it as well. You can also support us by donating through Patreon. This information and more can be found on our website, broconvo.com, and on our various social media accounts. Thank you.